And we'll take leaders' questions under Standing Order 36. And I'd like to call firstly upon the Leader of Sinn Féin, Deputy MaryLou McDonald, please.
Taoiseach, the cost of living is out of control. Workers and families are at breaking point as they struggle to keep up with sky-high bills. Their quality of life, their ability to plan for their future and their mental health are now really suffering. People are fleeced with extortionate rents and rip-off insurance costs. Childcare fees are the equivalent of a second mortgage. The price of the weekly shop has gone up, while households have been hammered by more than 30 increases in energy and fuel bills just this year. Many people feel that they're caught running an unwinnable race with no end. And Taoiseach, this is no way for people to live. My colleague, Deputy Claire Curran, has an online survey on the cost of living crisis, and so far, just over a number of days, 14,000 people have responded. And I'd like to share some of the responses with you. Siobhan says, I am commuting from Quilty, County Clare to Limerick to work. I'm paying upwards of €75 on diesel a week. That's an increase of €15 compared to June. The price of food is also rising. I'll soon have to buy oil for the house, and that price is rising. I won't be able to afford my basic needs to survive. Alison says, my husband and I both work. We have 2 kids. Our rent is €1,200 per month. Childcare for the 2 of them is over €1,000. We are drowning in debt, car loans and bills. My husband is now signed off as he is now suicidal. It is devastating. Kevin says, I work full-time, earning what's considered a decent wage, but I live month to month, using my credit card for any extra spending. No nights out, no family holidays, no fancy house. I just work to pay essential living costs. I cannot plan for a rainy day. Taoiseach, this is just a glimpse of what people are going through. In the budget, Sinn Féin outlined for you how you could start getting the cost of living under control. We called on you to cut rents, to put a month's rent back into tenants' pockets through a tax credit, but you did nothing for them. We asked you to cut childcare fees by 2/3, but you chose instead to cap fees at their current unaffordable rate. And all you did was make it harder for people to light and heat their homes with another carbon tax hike. Taoiseach, people are at the end of their tether. You can't continue to sit on your hands. You need to start standing up for people. So far, you've ignored our calls to respond to the cost of living crisis, but today I'm going to try again because I think you have an opportunity to make a difference on energy costs. There are options. Bacart dit VAT a geara, mar tá daoine faoi brú, agus caithfí an rialtas sus a thuirt dóibh. I want to ask you to temporarily cut VAT to 0 on these energy bills for the winter months to give people some breathing room. I want to ask you, have you considered this action? I want to ask, have you discussed it with the EU Commission? Temporarily cutting VAT on energy bills would alleviate at least some of the pressure that people are currently under, and I'm asking you to do this as a matter of urgency.
Thank you, Deputy McDonald. Taoiseach.
Well, first of all, there is no question but that inflation has picked up recently all across the world, in Europe and indeed in Ireland, and the annual rate of consumer price inflation was 5.1% in October, highest since 2003. One of the key factors here, of course, is the supply chain disruption and issues caused by the COVID impact across the globe on supply chains and on the imbalance between supply and demand arising from that, and also issues specific to energy on the global market, and particularly in relation to gas. And so it's not, the carbon tax is not the factor responsible for this inflation, and you shouldn't try and present the impression that it is, which you've been consistently doing. I'll come back to that in a moment. But I accept fully that prices are increasing. And they're increasing because predominantly of external factors that are global, and every country is experiencing this, and it was discussed at the recent European Union Council meeting in respect of energy prices in particular. And there's a broader range of issues that would determine that in terms of the supply issue around gas in particular. What came out of that meeting, essentially, if you looked at what the energy mix within Europe, we have to drive renewables even further and expand the provision of renewables in terms of sustainability, both in terms of price and in terms of what's best in terms of our environment. And we have to develop very strong interconnection for a more sustainable energy situation into the future. But in the budget, we did bring in a tax package worth about 520 million, which you opposed, but which will give workers relief and which will help them. It just will help. It won't meet all of the additional costs, but it will help workers in terms of dealing with the increased cost of living. And then we introduced a social welfare package worth about 550 million to guard against fuel poverty and to specifically target those on low incomes who would be most at risk of the increasing energy costs. And in terms of childcare, we made a very significant decision to back workers in childcare, working with the unions and working with the representatives of workers to create a sustainable pathway for all those who work in childcare through a GLC, working with employers and employees, and we providing from the state substantial financial underpinning so that there will be career pathways. We will also, as you mentioned, the freeze on the increase in childcare costs, but we want to go further in terms of reducing childcare costs. So this budget, which is substantial, represents part of a multi-annual approach to transform childcare in this country in terms of those who work in childcare, in terms of the development of the child, in terms of affordability, and in terms of access and sufficiency of provision. And in terms of the tax credit you've put forward in terms of rent, there's no guarantee at all that that would achieve the outcome that you would desire. And I think the Minister for Housing has brought in measures to restrict the increase in rent, but this inflationary spike has overtaken that. But he's going to bring further measures to deal with that, legislative measures to deal with that, and he'll be bringing them before government shortly, which will again bring in further controls on rent increases. But the most fundamental way to deal with rent increases is increased housing supply, greater cost rental provision, and other affordability measures that we've already provided for legislatively. You know, this is not just happening in the Republic; it's happening in Northern Ireland, as you know well. You're in power there. I mean, energy bills are really going through the roof. 35% gas prices have jumped in Northern Ireland. So it's just further evidence of what's happening on the island as a whole, Europe, and the wider world, and we will do our best to protect the low-income groups.
Thank you, Count Corley. The Taoiseach cites external factors, Brexit, COVID, the global energy market, yet fails to answer the straightforward question that I asked him. You have done nothing to alleviate the hardship that Siobhan, Alison and Kevin are experiencing. In fact, in the budget, you did nothing for renters. You proposed to freeze unaffordable childcare fees at their current extortionate rate. And you did introduce a carbon tax hike, which will affect people's bills. It will drive people's bills up. I have asked you to change tack, to actually respond to the realities of people's lives, and on the matter of VAT, to reduce it to zero temporarily for the winter months to give some relief to families, to workers, to people who are struggling. And I want to put that to you again, Taoiseach. Don't tell us what you can't do. Tell us what you will do and address the issue of VAT. The Czech Republic, as you know, has made a move to cut VAT to zero on energy bills. I want to ask you to follow suit, to do the same thing, and to give some relief to people and families who are really suffering.
Thank you.
As I said in the budget, we did give relief. You just choose to ignore it, and in fact, you opposed it. You opposed the tax relief that we gave to workers in this budget, and you were against it, and which is up to 500 million in terms of workers on average incomes in this country. And furthermore, I want to say to you, in terms of your comments on carbon tax, it's about time you got off the fence on climate change. Because you are having an each-way bet through the chair. You're having an each-way bet every week, every month in this House for the last number of years on the issue of climate and on the issue of carbon tax, which gives us the funding, by the way, to help people on low income meet the increased energy costs and the energy prices. And I think that that's so disingenuous from you that you continually, through the chair, seek to exploit measures we've taken which are not popular, I accept, which are very important in terms of dealing with the climate emergency facing the globe and facing this country. And we, no, you don't take anything as a no. We have taken measures already to help people who are on low incomes in terms of fuel poverty through the measures that we've taken through the increased taxation.
Thank you.